So I've had a couple of weeks off over Easter. My daughter had nearly a month off, so that was quite an epic journey. Lots of fun, but also, as I was just saying to Hamish, you do have to work a little bit as well. So there's a bit of juggling, a bit of taking. Rosabella actually did one of my clubhouses last week. She was terribly well behaved and joined in as well while we were at the hotel, multitasking as you do. But I certainly didn't take her, because she's at school today, to the two viewings that I've just done, but we'll touch on that in a minute. So guys, what we've got is Hamish and Ingrid here today. This is very much a property networking, as it says on the tin. So we're just going to kick off in a moment and talk about, will property legislation end profitable property investing? That was a bit of a tongue twister, actually. I'm not going to say that quickly. But let's just have a quick intro and just give us a little bit of bit about yourself, and just a quick jump into what you've been up to. I'll do an intro. So yeah, Emma Howitt. I've been in property for about 4 years now. Started with rent-to-rent serviced accommodation, developed an apart hotel last year. And I have just been to 2 viewings. We're going to do a couple of, quite a few 1 to 2 bed conversions with and extending the leases, short leases, which I think Hamish is doing as well. And I just went and visited 2 of them. Oh my gosh, it's the stinkiest house I've ever been to. The bathroom, I can't quite believe it, was full of cat poo. Very, very disgusting. So there was a lot of walking around with my scarf over my mouth. But anyway, other than the stinkiness, both really good. One of them was a bit more complex because it was in the eaves and we couldn't quite fit in a shower where we wanted to, so we might have to go for a Jack and Jill bathroom, but that's fine. All exciting. So yeah, Hamish, introduce yourself and let us know just a little bit about what you're up to at the moment. Oh, Hamish, you're on mute on, there we go.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
My name's Hamish Douglas, and I'm a full-time property investor now. I started about 10 years ago with my first buy-to-let, but I only got educated, properly at the beginning of this year. And so things are now starting to pick up a lot faster for me, having sort of sat on 2 places for a while. My short lease project has finally completed. We completed on Thursday, so I had a bit of a celebration for that. Very happy that that's finally going ahead. Now just trying to get things in place for the light refurb that we're going to do on it, and hope that the freeholder is going to come back with a nice answer to our Section 42 notice that went out 2 weeks ago. It doesn't smell of wee, although all cat poo. But I think on that, Emma, what is the property investor saying is, if it smells of wee, think of me.
I've not heard that one.
No one else wants to buy it. So
yeah,
all good for a property investor.
I love that. Fantastic.
But I've also recently taken on a second serviced accommodation in Coventry, and I'm hoping that by the end of this week I will have a third one, but in Oxford this time, which is actually where I'm based. So just waiting to hear back from the landlord on that over the next couple of days.
Awesome. Love it. And that, have you found that yourself? Is that through a sourcer?
I found that one myself. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so it's my local neighborhood, and I'm actually looking to do a little bit of marketing next week on digital marketing on Facebook ads and things, so see whether anything comes back from that.
Oh, well, let us know how it goes. I've not used ads for a long time, but sounds interesting. Ingrid,
I'm hearing mixed reviews, so I thought I'd give it a try.
Fantastic. Keep us updated. Ingrid, introduce yourself and let us know what you're up to.
Hello, I'm Ingrid Davison. I'm in properties more than 5 years now, but coming from business background, from 25 experience, and trying to adjust business or make business from properties. So I have some properties in Cambridge, which I'm doing service and HMO. So looking for more properties. Recently for more service accommodation or for more deals. Recently, I was together with Emma involved in one project. So looking and trying to arrange finance for that project. So fingers crossed everything would be moving. We're always looking for sort of profitable deals in property, as everyone here. So happy to work together.
Fantastic, fantastic. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's just jump in. And guys, do remember that this is, open networking. So if you want to jump up and put your 2 penneth in, we are very open to that. So really, I just thought it was quite relevant at the moment. And I know there's been a lot of people that have been a little bit panicked about this kind of consultation that's going on at the moment in England about changes to serviced accommodation, furnished holiday lets, and legislation. And a lot of people have been questioning, should I wait to invest, especially in serviced accommodation? So obviously you've got rent to rent and you've got purchasing. So it's pretty interesting, I found. Now, just on the offset, for me, what I'm seeing is that and just as overall, I'm seeing that inherently it seems to be more of not a concern, but it seems to be more directed at what you might call tourist areas. So places on the beach where you've potentially got half of the year there, you've got properties empty, and half of the year they're full. There is also information that they're saying that if you already are running, then you should be getting grandfather rights. So that would be great. There's also that if they change it to give it a new use class, say C5, that obviously you'd have to apply to change the use class, the planning use class from say C3 to C5. But what looked good to me was the fact that you could, by permitted development, return it back to C3 relatively easily as well. So that was pretty good to me. Have you guys picked up anything else from this kind of chat and this legislation?
Well, I think one of the things that Gov pointed out when he went to the press with it was that what they're really sort of focusing on is the excessive use of places which are going to be used, sort of second homes and sort of the smaller service accommodation or furnished holiday lets. That's kind of more their focus. What he did suggest was he doesn't, he identifies that it does support the tourism of the country, and that this is a growing sector. And that any small companies and any SMEs that are still going to have support in business growth. So I think what he's largely targeting is people who are effectively accidental landlords as such, and are just using it to make a little bit of extra income, a little bit of extra pocket money on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. Ingrid, what has been your sort of feelings around this whole thing?
To be honest, not nice that it's happening. From one side, with some changes would be again. So, but what happens always in
Oh, I can't hear her.
Yeah, Ingrid, your internet seems to have gone down a bit. Speak again.
Yes. So. Pardon?
Yeah, that's better. We can hear you again now.
Yes, what I'm telling as always. What I'm telling as always, if there is something in a business which is growing and things are happening and they are not regulated, always the government wants to regulate and look after. So in that case, everyone was telling that it has to happen. Question when. So when time came. So I completely agree with Emma. So no need to panic. Just carry on, and things will. It's not to kill. It's just to do a little bit of amendments. So just move on and don't stop and don't limit yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and also what I would love what I'm thinking, if what kind of restrictions would be, or if they would be, I assume it's gonna help for hotels a little bit as well. Sorry for all service accommodation, because it's different products. But what I highly advise all these apartment hotels, it's absolutely nice mixture between just apartment or houses and hotels as such. So for us, we have now two very safe options, that if new legislation will come, everything would be clear for much longer time, and you can plan everything accordingly. And apartment hotels, they also give quite a lot of opportunities and possibilities for you. So maybe just for good. I have a lot of stress and panic how it's gonna be and so on. But if you will think wider, we're not doing that to kill business. Just some small amendments, or whatever amendments would be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're key actually on that, on the apart hotel thing. I think, yeah, definitely anything that's already in the C1, or you want to change it into that C1 category, is going to be, you know, not affected. And potentially where I always see the legislation is that it weeds out maybe the kind of less professionals. And in fact, I mentioned it before to Hamish, there are definitely a few SA providers that I've seen out there that are just appalling. And, you know, they haven't done any educating. I would say they're really not at all compliant. And so this type of legislation to me is always going to be positive. I've always done the so Bridget, sorry, the legislation is that they're looking to bring in a new planning use class for serviced accommodation, potentially C5. And yeah, so that you could change it from C3 to C5, and whether people are worried about that. The other thing that I think is really key is it, yeah, so we've said weeding out maybe the non-professionals. I think that's, you know, really key, that everyone wants to offer a fantastic service for their clients or their guests. But at the same time, this still only is in consultation. So is this going to be happening by the end of the year? We don't know. Is it going to be in a couple of years? I don't think we exactly know yet. So I definitely wouldn't. Have you heard anything else, Hamish?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think a lot of this legislation particularly points out towards Airbnb rather than any of the other portals or the other marketing strategies that people use. And the reason for that is, like you say, there's a lot of unprofessional people who are letting out their room, they're letting out their home when they're not there. They're operating this as, you know, the accommodation to make money, but they're not compliant. They're not making sure that they've got the EPC, the EICR, the gas safety checks. They've not maybe got smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors in the house. So, you know, there's a lot of error, margin for error, and, you know, issues happening that could even be a threat to people's lives, let alone just the quality of the property that they're offering. And I think this was really pointed out by what Gov was saying when he went to the media, that he wants to make sure that people are regulated like this. And I think this is also highlighted by what's been happening in Scotland, where they've got the licensing. The licensing requirements, when you read through them, are just the basics of what you would have to rent out on a single let basis. So I think it's just about making sure you know, the properties are up to standard. And yes, in some circumstances, such as Cornwall, where there's massive outrage that people aren't able to live in the area that they've grown up in, because all the properties are empty. That's where there's going to be issues with people transferring over. But otherwise, I think it's a regulation to bring in safety aspects, which should be in the industry. And then, of course, I think, you know, the government they're not making enough tax out of it at the moment. So that's something that they're going to want to do as well, which they're doing from the hotels and the guest houses already, but they're not doing from Airbnb.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right. But it will be interesting though if how much they will bring on the basic requirements needs, because I know at the moment it's quite useful, you know, if you've got a low EPC, obviously because people are not living constantly in places and they're coming and staying, you don't have to have EPC-C or EPC-E or whatever to run serviced accommodation. There isn't that. So it'll be interesting whether they would bring that legislation in specifically for serviced accommodation. But again, you know, how we're not going to know that until it comes in, and if it does, then, you know, we'll make those requirements and it'll be there. And obviously you are getting a higher return for your property, so in theory you should be able to you know, increase the level of it. But Cash has just come up on stage. So Cash, yeah, did you have something to share as well? Would you like to just introduce yourself and yeah, and then jump in?
Yeah, sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Well, actually, thanks for accepting my request, Emma. Good to see you. I think we met at the Sunil Pope's Property Network meet, I think, last month.
Yes. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. So myself, I have been investing in property for the last 9 years. Also, as a day job, I'm a commercial finance broker. So I work with property investors and developers who raise short-term and long-term finance, mainly unregulated lending. So bridging finance, development finance, and some specialist mortgages, including SA mortgages. But no, I thought I'll listen into what's going around the short-term let industry market, as I've got one SA which a property I own, which is running as SA, and I might actually buy a few more. And it'll be good. It's good to keep an eye on the market, what's going on. So, thanks for the summary, Emma, earlier on. What I was going to say is, well, I'll ask the question first. As part of this legislation, have you actually heard anything about some form of register that they will roll out for properties that have been running as SAs in England?
So
that will roll out, did you say?
An SA register of properties?
Well, I think that's what this consultation is looking to do, really, isn't it? It's trying to find out the information. I mean, this is quite an important point, is that it is a consultation. The government have admitted that there's a lot of media, media information coming out about it, about people being upset with properties being run in this manner. But they realise that actually they don't know what the market's like. They don't know how many properties are out there and how they're being operated. So they are trying to build a register to find out, how many properties in each area are being run in this manner. And so I certainly know in Oxford, the council have already requested that people do start signing up to the register so that they're aware of this. And I think this is one of their points going ahead, so that they can make a decision based on information, factual information, rather than just media outrage.
Yeah, I mean, that's just on the back of that. If that goes ahead, Hamish, in terms of register, from lending point of view, I think what's going to happen with lenders is it'll be quite easy for lenders to actually find out which properties are run as short-term lets compared to AST. So I think if someone is buying a property with the intention of running as short-term let, then it's vital that they get onto a proper SA mortgage or holiday let mortgage. And also, if someone is renting out a property from the landlord, it'll be good to get an agreement or something in writing from the landlord there that they are actually on a proper mortgage product than just a buy-to-let.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with all of these things, it just comes down to running a business, you know, whether it's purchase to serviced accommodation or rent to serviced accommodation, it's running it correctly and legally and compliant. And exactly as you've said, Cash, you know, if you are renting off a landlord, then they must have the correct mortgage product for the activity that is going on within the property. Now, you know, one would hope that actually from a lending perspective, and this is really, really great to come up, isn't it? That actually, you know, at the moment, there's two sorts, isn't there? There's serviced accommodation, which is inherently not that easy. There's very few products out there. And then you've got this kind of furnished holiday let, which is kind of a bit of a, you know, mix between, you know, they look at AST, et cetera, and what, you know, might be the income. And inherently, you know, it is seen that if it's in the right area and these places are doing well, they make mega money. They do really, really well in comparison to an AST. So it is actually, you know, to me, it would seem a lot safer because you're going to get your mortgage paid off much more quickly. Well, sorry, you've got the, you know, the chances of having your mortgage repayments each month paid off is pretty high if it's a properly run business over the year, etc. So it will be interesting to see whether that sort of shakes up that kind of lending market. And Cash, you've probably got, you know, longer experience of kind of seeing that, but I presume that could actually be a really, you know, positive element from a lending perspective. Is that what you kind of see? I mean, I don't know, I wasn't around when the HMO you know, legislation came in. Did that make any difference to lending or anything like that?
I think certainly it's going to help, Emma. What has happened over the last, I think, 18 to 24 months is you would see more lenders are coming into the market. And you're right that there are holiday let products and there are service accommodation Airbnb products, right? Not many lenders at the moment are still warmed up with the idea of SA only mortgage products, but the lending market is changing, and I think this legislation or some form of control by the government through local councils is only going to help. What that's going to do to the lenders is lenders are going to think about, okay, we now actually have a control of who we are lending in to. We have a little bit more information about the property, about the person, the applicant or the borrower who we are lending against, and we can know that they have this product or the property in this location, and they can do some due diligence on the demand. What is the AST rental like, and what are the low, medium, and high occupancy levels in that area? So I think going forward, that's only going to help, and it's going to actually shape up the products that these lenders are going to get out. And with some competition, I think it's the rates and the fees might come down. So overall, I think it could only be better for the property investors.
Well, we like hearing that, Cash. The rates coming down. That's
Thank you very much. Please make it sure it happens.
Exactly. That's going to sound a good one. But and I do really like that, Cash, as well. I think when we're looking at, you know, people coming into this, if you've already got a reasonably stable market for SA, you know, let's say in a city where you wouldn't really go on holiday, this is just going to be, you know, a fantastic move towards that, isn't it, in growing it? So yeah, so I like that. I suppose my kind of main concern around the whole legislation, if there are going to be concerns, because I don't really, in fairness, worry about anything until we know that it's going to be coming. I mean, as I said, I think it is going to be coming, but how short or long away that timescale is, no, we don't know, so we can only wait. But what I do wonder is the cost of, let's say, each individual unit. So whether you know, you'd have to, you know, obviously you could potentially have the cost of planning permission, if there's a license, you know, the potential costs of that, and whether that may affect, you know, the profits of those properties. But again, talking out loud, I suppose when you look at HMOs, I mean, they have to have planning permission, pretty much. They have to have, they also pay their licensing. So, you know, like all these things, I think we'd just merge it in. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, going on to the sort of the timescale of it, Emma, I mean, the consultation says it closes in June. Then they've got to make a decision on that. So that's not going to be a quick process. And then there'll be the application stage for the planning. And we all know that can take a long time already. Now, if you've got an entire country, you know, having to apply for planning applications, change over to a C5, it's going to be a very, very lengthy process. So, you know, by that point, we are probably going to get grandfather rights. And, you know, speaking with some planners, you apply for the process, if they turn you down, then you appeal. And by the time the appeal is done, then you've already got it. So I don't, you know, it's going to be at least a year and a half, I'd say, before anyone actually needs to have a C5 or is able to get a C5 planning use class.
And whether the I mean, the planners already are quite extreme, aren't they? So to put in this additional element,
workload on them,
yeah, is, you know, and they don't seem to be necessarily adding to, well, certainly in our area, they don't seem to be adding very many staff to what is potentially already very behind. You know,
actually it means it will take longer, and maybe it would be not 1 year and a half, maybe it would be 2 years or 2 years and a half. So that's also not bad.
Yeah, by which time you're operating and making money anyway. And then like I say, then you're getting in on the grandfather rights because you've got history of use.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as you were saying, just to reiterate that it does seem to be much more in the tourist areas that it's being aimed at, Hamish. Is that what you've got the gathering as well?
Yeah, I mean, like from the press release they had, and from bits, you know, I haven't read through all of the government documents as yet because they're quite lengthy. But from what I've seen, it's largely going off the you know, the media concern. This is all based on what the media is telling us is happening. And of course, as we know, the media likes the negative responses. So that is, you know, small little villages in the national parks in Wales, you know, Cornwall. I imagine that we'll have some of these issues in Oxford because Oxford's going to be it's very much constrained by its boundaries. You know, there's a lot of floodplains, and then all of a sudden you're outside of the city and into other areas. So Oxford is one of the least affordable, if not the least affordable city in the country. You know, it's definitely up there against London. So we're going to have some pushback there. But that's going to be very much in those areas. It's going to be Oxford rather than Abingdon or Didcot or Bidlington, you know, the peripheral market towns. So I don't think it's going to be a negative across board action. I think it's going to be very much, as property is, it's microclimate. And it'll affect one place, but you can still have safe and secure investments in other places where they're very happy to give you the planning for it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very interesting. Oh, we've got King Money has come on stage. Oh dear, let's see if that's not a I have to be ready in case it's somebody who's dodgy. Anyway, I'm sure it's a somebody who's just yeah. Hi, King Money. Did you want to introduce yourself and add to the conversation?
Yeah, I just got in here. I had a question.
Fantastic.
So, It says this is property networking, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So what do you guys talk about in there? What do you guys do?
So we're talking about, as you can see from the title, that at the moment in the UK, it sounds like you're maybe not from the UK, that we are looking
American.
at legislation that's coming into place for holiday lets, basically. So properties that we rent out, you know, for holiday makers, but we also rent out for contractors, and we've got some legislation coming in. So that's what we're discussing. Are you into property and things like that?
I wish I could invest.
Yeah. Well,
Never late. You always can start as soon as you can, or wake up in the morning.
absolutely. Okay, well, it sounds like you might want to listen in, but yeah, we're all big advocates of you know, getting kind of educated around all the ways that you can invest in property, not perhaps the normal ways that we've all grown up understanding and looking at. So I'm getting, yeah. Okay.
So Mirren Chaps has asked whether or not grandfather rights for SA is an assumption, and you know, obviously grandfather rights is not something that you can guarantee, but there is many situations where if you prove the usage of a property over a certain period of time, then automatically it gets planning for that. The exact details I don't know, perhaps Emma you know a bit more about.
I mean, that's what I've understood as well, that it certainly indicates that if you're already running, you know, you will be able to carry on and you will get the grandfather rights. But obviously it is a consultation, so that might change, but that seems to be, you know, definitely what is, you know, being advertised. So
yeah, and that's what Gov did mention in his press release, that, you know, if you're already operating, that would be the case. But obviously we need to find out what happens from the consultation, and as we know, the current government is liable to say one thing and then do something else altogether. So so we will have to see what happens with that.
Another question: how long you're operating? They also have to decide, because it wouldn't be just operating now. Question would be how long? It's 2 years, 3 years, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So again, we don't know, Mirren, and yeah, you're more than welcome to pop up. I'm trying to find you to see if I can invite you on stage. If you guys can see, to chat it through. Anyway, I can't find you on mine. But yeah, that will be you know, depending on how long it is, as to whether you can get the grandfather rights. So it is, yeah, but again, we don't know how long it's going to be before it comes in. So yeah, it's interesting. So Andrika has said, what about properties in London? Will you need planning for 90 days short let? I would presume that it will remain as it currently is, because you can get planning in London to change to serviced accommodation, can't you? Or to, so, or you
this will be an interesting one to see, won't it? I mean, are they going to change the places that already have actions in place, or is it going to be a consultation that affects everywhere across the board, or is London going to operate separately as it currently does?
Yeah.
You know, and we know Wales is different, Scotland's different, London's different. How much is it going to change? Will Wales and Scotland follow suit and do what we do? Is it going to be, is it going to happen in London? Or will they decide that actually it's going to be a 90-day situation in England?
Yeah, let's hope not for the 90 days, because that would be annoying.
Well, one thing I find interesting is they keep talking about short-term lets, but they don't specify what is short-term. You know, I know people who are doing short-term lets for over a year, which you could effectively do on an AST, and actually is one of those complicated grey areas where there has been a landlord who did do it for over a year and was considered to have been on an AST. So and obviously then you're going into different rules. But you know, for those of us who are targeting corporations and contractors, and you know, insurance companies, you could be looking at 6 months to a year to, you know, even longer, depending on what projects they've got on the go. You know, I know some companies who rent out apartments around the world, you know, on a pretty much permanent basis, but it's done by the company rather than the individual.
Yeah, I mean, I would always ensure that I put things in place to ensure that it never becomes an AST. So even if it's long term, months, or whatever, always ensure that you're, you know, having, you know, your terms and conditions are always re-signed. There's no sort of right to stay ever. If you need to go into the property and do whatever it is that you need to do, you go in. You know, that it must be a very clear line that there is no right to stay and it doesn't fall into that AST. So yeah, that's something to be really aware of. So James has raised a question and has come onto the stage. James, yeah, did you want to tell us your thoughts? Introduce yourself and tell us your thoughts, James. You'll have to unmute yourself if you wanted to speak, James. If not, I'll read it for him. So James has said, unfortunately, many of the avenues for the small investor to build wealth in the UK are being closed. Oh, I'm not really sure I agree with that one. I don't know about you guys. Ingrid, how do you feel about that? Do you think that small investors are, you know, the opportunities are being reduced?
No, I don't think so. To be honest, nothing. No one done anything. It maybe depends on yourself. How if you're reducing yourself, you're reducing yourself. But I didn't hear anything. Honestly.
Well, I have to say, I felt very much this several years ago when I was trying to work from a job and, you know, build up a portfolio slowly. I did feel that, you know, a lot of government legislation seemed to be targeting me and stopping me being able to step up above the level that I wanted to. But now I've gone more involved into it. Now I'm actually, it is a more of a key focus rather than a side focus. I'd say it's, you know, the possibilities are there and it is actually easier to step up. I think the difference is, and I do agree with James on this in some terms, if you look at what Dove said in his press release, he is saying that, you know, he was sort of insinuating that the people he's concerned about are the ones with the second homes, the ones who rent out their homes to make extra income. You know, not necessarily people who need to do it from a business point of view, but people who are just making that extra 6,000 a year on top of their current salary by letting rooms. And this is the Airbnb target audience, which is why Airbnb have been criticised more than any other portal. For those of us who are actually small businesses, we're using the other portals. You know, Booking.com will give me far more bookings than Airbnb, but also I'm targeting direct marketing. So there is definitely a difference between, you know, the investor who's trying to get a little bit more. They do, in my opinion, seem to be being attacked a little bit more by government legislation but the small companies are being encouraged, and this was something that Gov did put out in his press release. So he still wants to encourage small businesses to have that success. So I can definitely see his point, but I think it's a mindset shift. Either invest, you know, on a bigger scale, start to look at it more of a serious company, or get involved with people who are doing it on a more serious scale and investing as a small company, small to medium company.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I think, you know, to say that, I think definitely there's always lots of legislation and we can feel like, you know, we're being penalised, and I completely get that and I completely agree. However, I just see it more as a, you know, it's just business. It's just the path in business. There's always going to be a rock that's placed in that stream. You thought it was, you know, plain sailing, and you know, you're floating down the stream and it's all good. And then suddenly there's this huge rock, and, you know, and you're having to sort of find a way around that. And it's just another part of doing business to me. Is there still massive opportunities? Can you still build wealth in the UK as a small property investor? Absolutely. But I do feel that you have to have that knowledge, that education. And I think there's so much out there where you don't know what you don't know. And if you see other people being successful and growing, building their wealth, then I would say, you know, it's go and find out, well, what exactly is it they're doing? And it's interesting, actually. I'm reading a really fantastic book by Wallace D. Wattle, The Science of Getting Rich. And one of those things is when you look around you, if there are other people in your area doing the same things as you who are successful, and there are others who are doing pretty much looking like exactly the same things, they're just doing things in a different way. So there's still the opportunities to get there. It just may be that you need more knowledge or more support or whatever it is. So I totally agree, Hamish, and Ingrid as well. That I think it's a mindset thing, and it's just part of sort of doing business, so to speak. Sorry, Ingrid, I interrupted you.
No, all fine, completely agree. But what I want to tell but for example, when you're in business, there are laws which you always sort of like owner of a business have to do. And this is like with properties, as you told them, they just, service accommodations is business anyway. We in a more rules of
I can't hear.
Yeah, Ingrid, for some reason you've gone a bit Dalek-y again. Sorry, can you just repeat that again?
I'm telling that
we might have to, we can't hear you at all now, Ingrid. We might have to just leave you for just a second. Hopefully your internet will come back on a bit better. Gavin, I can see that you've jumped up on stage. Great to see you. Did you want to introduce yourself and and join in the conversation?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Just wanted to jump up and continue the point about timescales.
Okay, thank you.
The second time this morning, you know, I've been a property developer investor for 25 years, but the first time, every day you learn new things and hear different expressions. And I must admit, I've never heard the expression grandfather rights until this morning at about 8:30 when it was mentioned on another room, and I've heard it here today. intrigued at that expression. I'd like to learn more about it. Just to give my penny's worth. If you bought a house, a standard house or a flat, and you used it for serviced accommodation, Airbnb, unless I'm mistaken, you'd need to show four continuous years of use serviced accommodation as Airbnb before you could get a lawful use certificate for that use. And that would be pretty easy, just thinking out loud, because I would imagine rentals on the Airbnb and bookings.com and other platforms are easily documented over the course of that period. If you buy a house or a flat, or if you buy a commercial property in particular, talking about commercial to resi, and you get planning to convert a shop and uppers or an office building or an industrial building into flats, and you rented those out for 4 years, those flats out for 4 years as serviced accommodation, and you had a standard C3 planning consent, not C1, which I believe encapsulates hostels and serviced accommodation, if you did a development like that and you rented that out for 4 years, that wouldn't be enough. You'd need to show 10 years of evidence, because you would be in breach of the planning condition to say you needed to develop the property under its current use. So if you're doing a development and you're hoping to rent it out as serviced accommodation, then you could have a 10-year wait before you could get lawful use for Airbnb, for serviced accommodation. And just one final thing I wanted to add is that the problem with legislation is that if they bring in a new planning use class, being C5 for short-term lets, problem you're going to have, especially in London, is that no local plans will have a policy in favour of doing C5 developments. So a local plan will say town centre, sustainable location, encouraging mixed-use development, commercial and residential. That won't include short-term lets. So until local authorities, and I'm quite London-centric, but until local authorities start building in local policies, which include the ability to be able to get a change of use to C5 uses, whatever law the government brings in London is going to be, in my opinion, unless I'm missing something, totally irrelevant in respect of new developments, because every application that's made for a C5 development will be in breach of the local plan and won't be supported by the local authority.
I'm so sorry, I can tell example what I saw, and I was very, very surprised. For one planning permission in London, we was allowing mixture, HMO and C1. So you can pick whatever you want. Either you're running as C1 or as HMO. So in London, planners, I can't tell about everything, but just get one example, and I was very nicely surprised that it's already arranged like this, that you have to pick what you want and how you want to trade, and you're absolutely flexible, so you don't need to ask any permission or different permission, just do whatever you want. So, and I found that's very, very nice option how this issue could be done. And C5, it's another regulations, maybe, God knows what it's gonna be, but it would be another option. So maybe we're gonna do C1, HMO, C5. Then would be question, what's the difference between C1 and C5? Mm-hmm. But to be honest, what I wanted to tell that I saw another option, not C5, available in London. And I hope they will move that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, Gavin. Yes, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I do agree. There's a lot more there. I mean, I think, you know, with grandfather rights, I would anticipate that they're a bit more lenient. I don't think you'd have to have the 10-year, you know, for lawful use, you know, I would presume, because that, you know, let's be fair, service accommodation isn't even 10 years old yet. So that could be quite challenging for a lot of people. The only thing I can sort of compare it to is when you read the Scottish sort of paper that came out. I know they haven't kind of put it out there as it was, and it's now a bit more sort of local centric, but what they had, which was interesting, was if you had 6 or more units in a block and you wanted to run them as serviced accommodation, then you didn't need licensing. So that to me was like, oh, well, that's pretty useful. So I don't know, you know, why they had that in, or if there was something behind that, but that could be, if that was something that was included in the you know, in the English kind of papers and consultation, then that, you know, obviously wouldn't affect these developments, and potentially you wouldn't require it if you had, you know, more of them. I don't know, that's all I saw, and I didn't really know, and I have spoken to a few people about that Scottish part, you know, the section within that, why they had this over 6, then you didn't need to worry about it. To me, that was kind of, again, looking at, like Hamish has mentioned, you know, not really wanting the smaller people. So if you had 6 or more, they felt that you were already, you know, potentially experienced, would be potentially running a, you know, a correct business, so to speak. I don't know, but that would be one to think about. So just yeah, so Gavin, I don't know whether you've heard anything or anything's been mentioned about this 6 or more.
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I just think that, I mean, you spoke about licensing. Are you talking about licensing in terms of HMO licenses?
Well, obviously, if we have to get a license for serviced accommodation, you know, whether it's, you know, because even now there's some buy-to-lets in certain parts of the country where they're asking you to pay to be allowed to run it as a buy-to-let, even though you've got the correct use class. So whether that's going to come in as well, yeah, like we have with HMOs, not only do you have to get the correct use class if it's required, you also have to get licensed as well.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, anything that the government can do, especially at the moment with the housing crisis that we've got, but anything the government can do to make sure licensing is required, to make sure the quality of accommodation tenants have in the UK is up to sufficient standard in terms of its quality and in terms of its, most importantly, in terms of fire safety, they'll keep in place. So I very much doubt that licensing will be relaxed, and the only way I think that they'll be able to keep control of regulation in terms of service accommodation is somehow through the planning system, because through the planning system they have the powers of enforcement, so they'll actually have a remedy for people that are using their properties for an unlawful use. Yeah,
absolutely. And I do think, you know, I think it is to do with, you know, the housing shortage, but I think it's also to do with the fact that the government are having to claw back as much money as they can anywhere and anything. I
think, as I said, mainly involved in buying sites, getting planning and selling them, but do buy investments as well. And I mean, everyone screams and shouts at me that I should be doing SA, but I'm actually quite nervous about the strategy and about the saturation of SAs currently out there in the marketplace. I know people are doing really well out of it, but I just did 3 flats in Greenwich and thought long and hard about doing Airbnb, and then decided to rent them all out on ASTs. With the increase in rental values, I balanced up that against the cost of running an SA and against the risk of void periods, and would prefer to take a lower rent with much less hassle, aggravation, be able to sleep at night and not worry about how much I'm actually going to be getting in every month. And on other rooms this morning, I have heard stories of people who are struggling with their SAs and are, as a consequence, struggling to make mortgage payments. So I'm quite experienced and happy to take risk, but on other things can be quite risk averse, I think.
Yeah,
Gavin, well, I wouldn't say. Sorry. I wouldn't say that you're risk averse there, Gavin. I think you know it's all about doing your due diligence. And, you know, there are so many people that, you know, just jump on, you know, AirDNA or just ask a local, you know, SA management company, oh, you know, do you think I can do SA here? And they're like, yeah. And then they jump on board. And then suddenly, as you say, that area is oversaturated. It's so key that, you know, we've got to do our due diligence to make sure that the area can, you know, hold and is a growth area. I love emerging markets because I think those are really great. But even with the bigger ones, I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was like I was doing something around sort of Windsor, and you know there was literally nothing available. You know, last weekend, this week. I mean, you've got various other things coming up. Obviously, you had a half term and stuff, but it's understanding that it is a full year as well. One should always be looking at the full year. But yeah, I'm totally with you, Gavin. It sounds like yeah, we should all have another conversation here. There's some similarities. If I might catch up with you and send you a DM, Gavin, because there's a couple of things that yeah, we're doing in London. It might be worth a chat about.
Yeah.
But,
and there's also the legislation risk now as well. So that's just another risk that I sort of could foresee. And I looked on Airbnb, and there was quite a lot of flats available in the immediate proximity, and there was quite a lot of voids there. I didn't do a huge amount of diligence, probably as much as I should have done, but I just feel like sometimes it was a place that tourists go and see the Cutty Sark and what Greenwich has to hold for a day, but don't necessarily want to stay there. So anyway, I made the decision that I made, and I'm happy with it, and I got some pretty strong rent. So sorry, I think Hamish wanted to come in.
yeah, apologies.
But I was just going to say, Gavin, I mean, I've had a quick look at your profile, and you've got a lot of knowledge and experience about getting planning and navigating the planning system. So I found it interesting that your concern was more the operation of it rather than the planning and the legislation side of things. And it'd be interesting to hear more of your view on what you think about how to navigate the planning and legislation side. But in terms of the operating service accommodation, I think this goes back to what Emma was saying, as what differentiates us is those who do it as a sideline, and those who get strongly educated and find out a little bit more about how to run it efficiently and successfully. Having worked in a tourism background for quite a few years, one of the things we were aware of was you've got to keep adapting to the market to keep ahead of your competitors. And it doesn't matter that more and more people are popping up doing exactly the same thing. You can stay stronger than that, so long as you're able to swing with the punches, as it were. But yeah, going back, I mean, I was kind of more interested in your opinions of how to navigate the planning process, because you've obviously got a lot of experience in that.
Yeah, how long have we got?
Not long. I think we're out of time.
Yeah, I know. You know what? I just find that the planning. I mean. I just find that the planning process is a constant sort of moving target. I think my current state of play is, I had an interesting meeting with one local authority last week. What we have done historically is do a pre-app, submit a planning application, and then negotiate with local authorities through the application process. And one local authority who are significantly under-resourced says to us, we won't negotiate during the planning process. You'll do a pre-app, you'll submit an application, and we'll determine that application. We haven't got time to go back and forward with the developer to say your bin stores are not big enough. Your roof design is sort of not in keeping. Your unit sizes are not compliant. What we will do is we'll refuse it. We haven't got the resources to go back and forward. So they want everything washed out at the pre-app stage, and this is where I sort of see it going. And I don't really sort of mind that, because at least you know where you'll stand. So they don't want one sort of.
Oh, I've lost Gavin.
They want 2 or 3 pre-apps to nail everything down prior to submitting an application. And then once you submit an application, they're saying they will determine it in the statutory period. Well, that is, that's gold to me, because at least I know I'll get a decision in 8 or 13 weeks, depending on whether it's a minor or a major application. And I can use the pre-app process as long as it's pretty quick, as long as I get a pre-app within 2 to 3 weeks of making the application, and sit down with the planners and actually nail out all the infinite details to make sure that they're happy with the scheme prior to submitting an application. And that's the way I sort of see it going.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Thank you, Gavin. And yeah, look forward to catching up outside of this. Well, look at that. It's top of the hour. We did have Joy who jumped up, but she has now gone. So sorry, Joy, to have missed you. But yeah, I think inherently, I think we're all in an agreement that yes, there is legislation coming in. We must keep an eye out on it, be aware of it. But inherently, it shouldn't really stop us at this stage. Keep going, because you know, you never know what's going to change around the corner. Nothing's in place yet. So yeah, keep going, keep being professional, obviously, and working forward in that. So yeah, awesome. Well, look, thank you so much. Hamish, do you have a closing comment for us?
No, but I think the general story with property investing is there's never a bad time to get in. Just get in and keep going at it. And the longer you're in it, the better it gets.
Absolutely. And how about yourself, Ingrid? Anything else that you wanted to add?
The same. There is never ever, what we're telling, there is never ever a good time to buy property. Just buy property and wait, and things happening in your way as well. But again, due diligence it's very important. In this case, we will see what will happen. We can talk as much as we want. I believe they don't know themselves what we're gonna create, and when they will create, we will need to follow it. Otherwise, we will be doing something unlawfully. So, but I don't know. I'm very positive. Whatever what we're gonna create, it wouldn't kill our businesses. It just would be amendments, and that's it. And we're talking about 1.5 years, maybe 2.5 years. And God knows how everything would be structured. So it's so much to wait till more clarification will come. So, but just don't stop, move, take more properties if they're working and profitable for you, and happy days.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so guys, next week I am back here with Guillaume Black. If you are wanting to only deal with motivated sellers, then next week is the time for you to come and listen in, noon till 1 o'clock. He is absolutely phenomenal and has got an incredible platform to help us only deal with motivated sellers. So that sounds like a good place for me. I'm going to be, really looking forward to catching up. And I think, he had his baby only 2 days ago, because we weren't too sure whether it was going to fit around having his child. So that is exciting. So again, guys, thank you so much for everyone who's joined in. We really appreciate that. Oh, Miran, that's lovely. And Cash, thank you so much for your kind words. We really appreciate everyone being here. And this again will be obviously on replay. We've managed to get this one replayed within the new property networking house in Clubhouse. This has also just been live on Facebook, and within a day or two it will be on YouTube as well. So please do, guys, come and find my YouTube channel. I want to get to 1,000 subscribers. This is my Q2 goal, so I would really appreciate it if you come and find me, Emma Howitt, Pure Abodes, on YouTube, and follow, and then you'll see our content coming up. Okay, Ingrid and Hamish, really appreciate you being here and supporting us today, and giving some great feedback and knowledge. Okay, guys, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.